All right, let's dive deep into some Mars mysteries. You guys really went all in on the red planet this time, sending us all this stuff from Mars, water, methane, and the search for life. Some big questions are coming up, that's for sure. About our neighbor, I mean.
Yeah, there's a lot here. It's amazing how much we're still learning about Mars.
I remember back when, everyone thought Mars was just this dry, dead rock. But then, little clues started popping up, things that just changed everything.
You were talking about finding liquid water,
Yeah.
right? Not just frozen, like ice, but actual flowing water, even if it's super salty. That was huge.
Yeah. So how do we go from Mars's bone dry to, wait, there's liquid water? What happened?
Well, it started with NASA, their Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. That orbiter spotted these dark streaks on some Martian slopes. They're called recurring slope linea, and they kind of come and go with the seasons.
Okay, so something's flowing there, but how do we know it's water?
Right. So scientists looked at the light reflecting off these streaks, and guess what? The signature of hydrated salts. Basically, it means those streaks are salty water seeping down the slopes. It's not like a raging river or anything, more like a slow trickle. Briny.
But still, liquid water. And that's like the key ingredient for life as we know it.
Exactly. Finding that water opened up a whole bunch of possibilities, like maybe Mars had life in the past, or get this, maybe it still does, somewhere. And of course, it's a big deal for any future missions, sending people there. Think about it. Getting water right from Mars, for drinking, for growing food, even making fuel for
No
rockets.
kidding, that would solve a ton of problems for longer missions, right? Trying to live there for a while.
Totally. Having that water right there would make Mars a much more livable place for people.
All right, this is where it gets even more interesting. So we've got the liquid water thing going on, but then there's this whole methane mystery. Like NASA's Curiosity rover actually found methane on Mars, right? And the levels, they go up and down with the seasons. What's the deal with that?
Oh, the methane mystery is a big one. On Earth, most of the methane we find, it's from living things, tiny organisms, microbes.
So you're saying, maybe there's Martian microbes hanging out underground, breathing out methane?
It's possible, right? That's what makes it so exciting. The way it spikes in the Martian summer and fades in the winter, it seems like there's some active process happening. But we have to be careful. Methane can also come from other things, geological stuff, reactions between certain rocks and water.
So how do we figure out if this methane is like a Martian burp, from microbes or just some weird rock thing?
It's tricky. One way is to find out exactly where the methane is coming from, pinpoint the source, and then we might understand what's making it. Oh, and there's another twist to this whole methane thing. The ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter. That mission was built to study Martian gases, but it didn't find as much methane as Curiosity did. That's got scientists arguing.
So it's like a scientific debate.
Yeah. Some think it's because the two missions collected data differently. Others think maybe the methane comes out in bursts, really localized, so it's hard to see from orbit. Lots of pieces to this puzzle, and we haven't put them all together yet.
Sounds like we need a lot more research before we can say for sure if this methane means there's life.
Oh, for sure. But that's the fun part of science, right? Always searching, always learning new stuff.
It just shows you Mars is always changing, always throwing us curveballs. And those surprises, well, they usually lead to even bigger questions.
Definitely. And those questions keep us coming back for more, trying to figure it all out.
Before we go too deep down the methane rabbit hole, I want to talk about something else wild on Mars. Those dust storms. They can cover the whole planet and last for months, right? That's not just a windy day, that's crazy.
Oh, you're right. Those planet-wide dust storms, those are a serious force of nature. They block out the sun, mess up communications, and they can be dangerous. For robots exploring there and for any humans who go in the future, for sure.
Yeah, remember what happened to NASA's Opportunity rover back in 2018? That big dust storm basically killed it, right?
That was rough. It showed us how powerful and unforgiving those storms can be. That Martian dust, it's not just blocking the sun, it's super fine and abrasive, and it gets this electric charge.
So it's not just blocking the sun, it's sticking to everything, messing things up.
Exactly. It can get into sensitive equipment, gunk up solar panels, and it might even be dangerous for people to breathe.
So how do we deal with that? Is there any way to protect future missions from these dust storms?
Scientists are working on it, different strategies. One idea is to build tougher tech, stuff that can handle the dust better. Another is to get better at predicting the storms. Like imagine having some AI system that can warn us ahead of time. Then missions could take cover, or change their plans to stay safe.
That would be awesome. But, some people are thinking even bigger. Like, why not just live underground on Mars? Avoid the whole dusty mess altogether.
That's a real option, yeah. People are talking about that. Underground habitats, they could protect you from radiation, the crazy temperatures, and of course, the dust storms.
It's wild to think about all the challenges and then all the creative solutions people are coming up with to live on another planet. It's like pushing the limits of what humans can do.
No doubt. We have to think outside the box, find new ways to solve problems we've never even faced before.
Okay, let's change gears a bit. Talk about Mars's distant past. Earlier, you said finding liquid water changed how we see Mars. But it goes deeper than that, right?
Are you talking about the idea that Mars used to have a huge ocean covering a big chunk of its northern half?
Yes. And not just a little puddle, a real ocean. There's even signs of mega-tsunamis, like reshaping the whole landscape.
It's true, it's hard to imagine now when you see those pictures of dry, dusty Mars. But scientists have found things that look like ancient coastlines. And they've found these giant piles of boulders way inland, like something a massive tsunami would carry there.
So imagine this. Giant asteroid hits this Martian ocean, sends waves hundreds of feet high, crashing all over the planet. Not a good day to be on the beach. But seriously, how big are we talking?
We're talking waves maybe 120 meters high, almost 400 feet. Strong enough to move those giant boulders inland, leaving them there for us to find billions of years later.
That's insane. So why is this ancient ocean such a big deal besides the whole awesome tsunami thing?
Well, if Mars had an ocean, it means the conditions were right for liquid water for a long, long time. And remember, where there's liquid water, there could be life.
So are you saying, like, maybe there was life in that Martian ocean? And could it still be around today, hiding underground in some frozen pocket of water?
That's the question scientists are trying to answer. It's a pretty exciting idea, right? Life from that ancient time still holding on underground.
It blows my mind to think about that. But here's another thing I've been wondering. If Mars used to be so wet and maybe even livable, what happened? How did it go from oceans to this cold, dry place we see now?
That's a question that's been bugging scientists for a long time. And to answer it, we have to look at what happened to Mars's atmosphere.
All right, so break it down for me. What happened to the Martian air? I have a feeling this is where things get really complicated.
It is, yeah, there's a lot going on here. One of the biggest things is that Mars lost its magnetic field. See, Earth's magnetic field, it's like a shield, protecting us from the solar wind, all those charged particles the sun throws at us. Without that shield, Mars got blasted.
So, like, the sun basically sandblasted Mars and blew away its atmosphere.
That's a simplified way to put it, but yeah, basically. As the atmosphere got thinner, Mars got colder and drier. Eventually, all that surface water froze or evaporated, leaving the dry, barren landscape we see now.
It's crazy to think about these huge changes happening over millions, even billions of years.
It shows you that planets aren't static. They change, sometimes dramatically.
Makes you wonder, if it happened to Mars, could it happen here? Could Earth someday lose its atmosphere and become another dead planet?
That's something scientists are definitely looking into. By studying Mars, we learn about how planetary atmospheres work and what it takes for a planet to be livable for a long time.
Wow. That's kind of a scary thought, but also really important to understand.
I agree. It helps us appreciate how fragile Earth is, how important it is to protect it.
It's like looking in a mirror, but seeing a reflection of what could be, both the amazing things and the potential dangers.
Exactly. A reminder that we need to take care of our own planet, protect all the life here. We've been talking a lot about Mars's past and what might happen there in the future, but sometimes I think we forget about what Mars is like right now, in the present.
That's true. It's easy to get caught up in those big stories, ancient oceans, or searching for life, or people living on Mars someday.
Yeah.
But what's it actually like on Mars right now? Like, if you could stand on the surface?
Well, one thing you'd notice right away is the temperature. It's freezing on Mars. The average temperature is about minus 63 Celsius. That's like minus 81 Fahrenheit.
Brr. No Martian beach trips for me, I guess. But what about the air? We talked about Mars losing most of its atmosphere. What would it be like to try and breathe on Mars?
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to breathe on Mars without a spacesuit. The atmosphere is super thin, like 1% as dense as Earth's, and it's mostly carbon dioxide, not exactly breathable.
So spacesuit is mandatory just to step outside on Mars, huh?
Absolutely, and not just any spacesuit. It would have to protect you from the cold, the low pressure, and all the radiation, because Mars doesn't have that magnetic field to shield it.
Sounds rough, but I gotta say, those pictures we see from Mars are amazing. Those huge red deserts and giant volcanoes and canyons that make the Grand Canyon look tiny.
Oh, yeah. Mars is a beautiful place in its own way, stark, but beautiful. Billions of years of volcanoes and asteroid impacts and floods have carved out this incredible landscape. It really makes you feel small.
It's funny to think that people used to imagine Martians building canals on Mars. Now we know it was all those natural forces shaping the planet, not aliens.
Exactly. All those craters and canyons and mountains, they all tell a story about what Mars has been through, and we're only just starting to understand it.
It's like reading a history book, but the planet itself is the book. And every time we send a new rover or orbiter, it's like uncovering another chapter.
That's a great way to put it. And just like with a good book, there are always more chapters to find more secrets to uncover.
Speaking of secrets, I have a question that's been bugging me. We've talked about how cold and thin the air is and the radiation, but what about gravity? Isn't Mars's gravity weaker than Earth's?
You're right, the gravity on Mars is about 38% of Earth's gravity. So if you weigh 100 pounds on Earth, you'd only weigh about 38 pounds on Mars.
So I could finally dunk a basketball. But seriously, what would that do to the human body if you lived on Mars for a long time?
That's what scientists are trying to figure out. We know that astronauts in space for a long time experience bone loss and muscle atrophy because of the lack of gravity.
So living on Mars could cause similar problems, huh? Would future Martians evolve into these weak, low-gravity humans?
Yes, it's definitely possible, but there could be some advantages to lower gravity too. Like it would be easier to move around and lift heavy things.
Imagine building those Martian settlements. You could lift giant construction beams like they were nothing.
Exactly. But we still have so many questions. How would lower gravity affect human development? Could we adapt to it over generations? Could people born on Mars ever come back to Earth?
Those are fascinating questions, and it shows how much we still need to learn about what would happen to people living on another planet long term.
That's why it's so important to keep doing research, not just on Mars, but also on the International Space Station, where astronauts are pushing the limits of what the human body can handle in low gravity.
Like a giant orbiting lab for studying how space affects us.
Exactly. And the things we learn there will be crucial for future missions to Mars and beyond.
Even with all the challenges, it's pretty exciting to think about the future of Mars exploration. There's so much potential for new discoveries and inventions and pushing the boundaries of what humans can achieve.
It's not just about the science and technology either. It's about our human spirit of exploration, our need to understand where we fit in the universe.
I think that's what resonates with our listener, that sense of wonder, wanting to learn more about this other world that's right next door.
And what we're learning about Mars isn't just about Mars, it's about understanding how planets work, the conditions that are needed for life, and maybe even finding life beyond Earth.
It's about those big questions that humans have been asking forever. Are we alone? Where do we come from? Where are we going?
And Mars, this seemingly empty world, this red dot we see in the sky, it might hold some of those answers.
It's mind-blowing to think that Mars could hold clues to some of the most fundamental questions about our own existence. A planet that seems so far away and alien.
It's a reminder that even across the vastness of space, we're all connected. The story of Mars is, in a way, the story of Earth, the story of our solar system, the story of the universe.
And it's a story that's still being written. We're lucky to be alive at a time when we're making these discoveries and breakthroughs, expanding what we know about the universe.
And who knows what the future holds? Maybe someday we'll be talking about Martian cities, not just rovers and science labs.
Imagine that humans living and working on Mars becoming a multi-planet species.
It's an incredible thought, and it reminds us that our journey of exploration has just begun.
You know, thinking about all this, there's something we haven't really touched on yet. Something really important when we talk about exploring Mars.
Oh yeah, the ethical side of things, right? It's not just about the science and the tech, it's about being responsible out there, especially as we start thinking about sending people to Mars.
Exactly. Like, what could we accidentally mess up on Mars? How do we make sure we're not, like, causing problems while we're exploring?
One of the biggest worries is something called planetary protection. We have to be super careful not to contaminate Mars with anything from Earth, especially life.
That sounds tough. I mean, are we talking about tiny microscopic stuff that could hitch a ride on our spacecraft or even on us?
That's right. And if any of those Earth microbes got loose and started growing on Mars, well, it could mess things up big time. It might harm any Martian life that's already there, or even make it impossible to tell if life on Mars started there on its own or came from Earth.
So, like, we don't want to go all the way to Mars just to find Earth's germs, right? So how do we keep things clean, prevent that contamination?
It takes a lot of effort, whole bunch of steps. First, everything that goes to Mars, the spacecraft, the tools, even the astronauts, they all have to be sterilized, cleaned super thoroughly. And once people are on Mars, we'll need strict rules to make sure they don't spread any Earth microbes around.
Sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It is, definitely. But it's something we absolutely have to do if we want to explore responsibly. We have to respect Mars, treat it like the unique and possibly life-bearing place it might be.
And protecting Mars from contamination, that's just one part of being ethical, right? There are those other big questions like who gets to go to Mars? Who makes the rules about what happens there?
Those are the big ones, no doubt. As we get closer to actually having people live on Mars, we got to talk about these things openly and honestly. We need everyone at the table, scientists, ethicists, people who make policy, and the public, everyone. That's the way to make sure we're exploring Mars in a way that benefits all of humanity, not just a few.
It really hits home that space exploration isn't just about the rockets and the cool tech. It's about who we are as humans, our values, what kind of future we want.
Well said. It's about learning and pushing the boundaries of knowledge, yeah, but doing it in a way that's smart, ethical, and doesn't mess things up for future generations.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Mars, it's amazing to think how much we've learned about it really just in the last few decades. Mars used to seem so far away and mysterious, but now we're sending rovers there, studying its air, figuring out its ancient history.
Yeah, and it's clear now that Mars isn't just some dead, boring rock. It's a planet that's changing and evolving all the time. It's got its own story to tell.
A story we're just starting to uncover. Who knows what we'll find in the years to come? Maybe proof that there was life there, or even hints that there's still microbial life hanging on somewhere underground.
Or maybe we'll find something completely unexpected, something that changes how we think about the universe.
That's what's so exciting about exploring Mars. That sense of possibility, that drive to discover the unknown.
And it's a journey we're all on together,
Hmm.
As we explore further out into space, we carry with us the hopes and dreams of everyone on Earth.
To everyone listening, thanks for sending us all this material on Mars and letting us dive deep with you. Hope this exploration got you thinking and wanting to learn even more.
Keep looking up, keep exploring, and never stop asking those big questions. The universe is huge and amazing, and there's still so much out there waiting to be discovered.